Welcome to the Heartland Journals podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. After you're done here, please hit the subscribe button and then hop over to heartlandjournal.com and see all of our entire library of shows and contributor columns under the tab we call Journal Entries. I just wrote my new one on Friday. Some amazing stuff actually getting picked up nationally, so I hope you like it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we're talking with special guest Mike Engelman. I followed Mike and his 200,000 Twitter followers. One of the first I found when I joined Twitter 2.0. As you remember, I was not a member of Twitter 1.0 under Jack Dorsey until Elon Musk took over. When it was like maybe 10,000 strong, Mike, a long time ago. So imagine my excitement to meet him and learn he wasn't a troll or a bot and is a real person when we both found ourselves at John Rich's Redneck Riviera bar on Broadway Monday for the Trump 2.0 inauguration. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was there, Christy Swanson, Cat Turd and his 3.4 million followers on X, John, of course, and many more. Mike was born and raised in southern Indiana. After 30 years of federal service, Mike retired in 2016 and became active in local politics and government. He ran for city council, which is amazing. Most people just bitch and moan about their city, but he actually threw his hat in the ring and won. He knew it takes a village of patriots to fix things, so he made Indiana state history, getting a group together and flipping the entire city government from Dem to Republican. Amazing. See, it can be done. Now he's actively working on transforming his local Republican Party to less like Pence, former governor of Indiana, to more like MAGA. Mike, how are you today?
I'm fine. You?
I am doing great. It is a beautiful sunny sky day. I don't think we had much of a winter here. How about you?
That's pretty good today. We're up in the 40s and lots of sunshine. We've not been above freezing for a better part of 10 days.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, we're all getting this post-freeze, non-freeze, just like DC. It's a morning in America, as they say. So tell us about Indiana. Is it easy to get Republicans there to legislate like Reagan, Goldwater Republicans, or are they still diehard Birch, Evan, Bayh, three Democrats? So that folks know, Bayh was the 46th governor of Indiana from 89 to 97 and a United States senator representing Indiana from 99 to 2011. Long time.
Well, Indiana's always been considered a red state. They govern really conservative on certain social issues, but other things, it's more establishment, if that makes sense. The current governor is Mike Braun. He was a United States senator, and Trump campaigned for him in 2018 here, several campaign rallies. Matter of fact, I went to one in Evansville of that year. First time I'd ever been to a Trump rally. And Trump's endorsement got him elected. He beat an incumbent Democrat who basically was a one-term Democrat senator. So Mike Braun vacated his Senate seat to run for governor. He just lives 20 miles from here. I've known Mike Braun for years, know a little bit about, he's a businessman, very wealthy type businessman, but he is very conservative, I do believe. He's already taken care of some initiatives through executive order, getting rid of the DEI culture and different things of that nature throughout state government. He's going to use a different approach as a governor. He's not going to administrate from Indianapolis. He's actually going to administrate from his hometown in Jasper, Indiana. He's got an office set up down there, and that's primarily where he's going to spend most of his time, which is kind of uncharacteristic for a governor. But I haven't talked to him about it. I know there's a lot of local people tied into him pretty closely. But Mike Braun, he's a Republican, and he won, but he doesn't have a lot of support from MAGA people for a host of reasons I won't get into. But he's just a little different. I can get along with him, and I'll take Republican over Democrat any day, because the Democrats in Indiana are just as nutty as the Democrats nationwide. They're a bunch of radicals. And Indianapolis is kind of kind of a breeding ground for that. The city council up there is far left, and it dominates the city council of Indianapolis. But Indiana, for the most part, governs right, but there is still a lot of establishment. And if you want to make change, you got to become a precinct committeeman, become a delegate, and get to the convention where you can have an impact on the rules, change some of the rules. So that's the next focus that we're working on here.
Rule changes. Okay, good. Fellow Hoosier, born in Columbus, Indiana, Indiana University alumni, former Vice President Mike Pence was the 50th governor of Indiana from 2013 to 2017, and as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from 2001 to 2013. Did he make the Hoosier faithful proud, or are they disgusted by him as a big fat rhino?
I have a negative opinion of Mike Pence. I wasn't a fan of him as a governor. I remember when he was a House member. He was picked to beat Trump's running mate in 2016 by the Koch brothers, Koch brothers, and other influentials. I don't believe it was who Trump really wanted to pick, but he was put on the ticket. He's generally favored, maybe neutral in the state, but after he did what he did January 6th of 21, before the joint sessions, he lost a lot of support.
Do you blame him for certifying the 2020 election for Biden, or do you think he followed the Constitution like he says and did the right thing January 6th?
Constitution is up for interpretation at that time. He could have vacated the vote until the 25 House and Senate Republicans wanted to present their information to delay the certification for 11 days. There was nothing wrong with that. But I'm convinced that Pence was behind the scenes backstabber of Trump based on what I've learned in the last 5 years.
Well, hopefully we'll get into some details of that as we go along here. In 2008, Esquire magazine listed Pence as one of the 10 best members of Congress, writing that Pence's unalloyed traditional conservatism has repeatedly pitted him against his party elders. Pence was mentioned as a possible Republican candidate for president in 2008 and 12. In September 2010, he was the top choice for president in a straw poll conducted by the Values Voter Summit. Things could have been very different. That same year, he was encouraged to run against incumbent Democratic Senator Evan Bayh. Remember, I just mentioned that, but opted not to enter the race even after Bayh unexpectedly announced that he would retire. Instead, won governor in 2012. You remember all that? What the heck was going on?
I think Pence did have his sights set on the presidency at one point. Governor is a stepping stone to that. I don't know what his motives really were at the time. I wasn't following it that close. I do know this. He was up for re-election in 2016 and got pulled off the ticket to be Trump's running mate. He might have gotten beat that year. There was some divisive issues that he didn't handle really well, social issues, and he got a lot of bad press about it. And he was actually behind going, into the election that year until he got pulled off the ticket. Then his running mate, Eric Holcomb, became governor.
If we assume that his political career is pretty much over now, since Trump didn't select him to come with him again as vice president, what do you think Indiana will remember Mike Pence for?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I bet you do.
Well, I think most people that I speak with, and that's not a gamut of the whole state, most people think of him as the guy that sold Trump out on January 6, 2021, by not allowing the evidence to be heard, because he was in Georgia the day before, and he promised everybody all the evidence will be presented. Every vote that should be counted will be counted. Well, he did a 180 on that, and then we all know what happened after that.
And he certainly got to know Kemp pretty well when they were in the Governors Association together. So, boom. Your Speaker of the House in Indiana is in the Republican caucus, Todd Huston. What can you tell us about being a Republican with Todd and the majority?
I don't know much about him. To be honest with you, I don't know much about a lot of our Indiana representatives, House and Senate. There's a core group that seems to run the show, and there's a lot of new faces this year that were elected last time. it is a super majority here. So the Senate, the legislature is going to run legislation. And I think it lines up pretty much with what the governor wants. So they'll get their agenda pushed through. They don't seem to find much resistance here because they're just outnumbered. The left is, Democrats are, and they can't break that wall, that red wall yet. But they haven't had the kind of person step forward. So to answer your question, sure, I don't know the guy. I've never heard of him. Don't know anything about him.
Okay. But you seem to have the same chronic illness that a lot of supermajorities like Tennessee, where I'm calling you from today, have, is that the red states, the majorities, the supermajorities that don't really have to take any calls from Republic or Democrats in their state seem to do. They seem to cooperate with them and sometimes carry their agendas, even though the voters and the press go along with it. And in my state, they do. Very left-leaning press, even though the voters are very, very staunch. We were Goldwater voters in Eastern Tennessee, for example, where Tim Burchett is from, Middle Tennessee, where you were just here. So you have a majority caucus chair, Greg Sturwald, District 40. Do you not know about him either, or is he Rhino or MAGA guy to help the agenda that we would want, the anti-establishment, more MAGA agenda?
I honestly can't. I don't know him either.
Okay, but as a body, then, as a super majority, do they act like Reagan Republicans, or do they act like
they act like Reagan Republicans?
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so that's good for you, right? You like the agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
You wrote a pretty long dissertation on X today, ending by saying, "I will never give commies a break." Who are the biggest problems in your mind, liberal progressive commies or Republican in name only progressive commies?
Well, we always know who the enemy is when we got Democrats. We don't always know who the enemy is on our side until they show themselves either on a vote or opposing an agenda item like for Trump. Okay. So they're the biggest threat. It's not the Democrats. We know who they are. The biggest threats are the Republicans or rhinos.
Yeah. Especially since we may have seen the vanquishing of the far left progressives at the federal level, at least with Kamala getting blown away and at least out for 2 years in the Democratic minority in the Congress, if Republicans can keep it, as they say. Indiana, just like Tennessee, is now a border state. We all are. What has illegal immigration done to your state, sanctuary city, and on your Twitter tag, it says America is a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Do you agree with me? We've tested the bounds of democracy with this border crisis and voted ourselves out of being a republic with all this welfare state and free immigration, as Milton Friedman warned against.
Yes, Indiana does have some type of an immigration problem where we've welcomed in four or five major cities an influx of Haitians. Some just to the west of me. I think Logansport, Indiana, Seymour, Indiana, Evansville, Indiana, Washington, Indiana is kind of a hotbed, which is just to my neighboring west, and a few other places where there's just been thousands of Haitians brought in over the last 2 years. They claim it's for jobs. I don't know what it is, but they are overtaking communities, overrunning the communities because they don't have enough housing for these people. So it is an issue. So I'm glad to see Tom Homan is addressing it as the borders are for Trump, and he is addressing it. But, they're going at it like they said they would. They're getting the hardest of the hardened criminals first. That's who they're going after, and doing the roundup that way and working its way down the system. So we're not a stranger to it, even though we're a conservative state. The attorney general here, Todd Rokita, if you remember that name, he was a Tea Party Republican who ran for the House in 2010, and he served 3 terms in the House, and he was going to run for Senate in 2018, and he backed off and ran for attorney general, and he's been in that position since. He's launched an investigation into 3 or 4 of these cities about the Haitians, trying to find out how they got here, if there was money under the table, so on and so forth. So there's an investigation going on there. And he said, we will cooperate as a state with Tom Homan in, deportations.
That's what it's going to take. Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita threatened 4 sanctuary cities. He said the flood of illegal immigrants entering the United States is a problem that harms all of us. The ones paying the price for this lawlessness are Hoosier taxpayers who must bear increased costs for healthcare, education, and that's a federal thing, and other services used by illegal immigrants. He sent that letter to East Chicago, Gary, West Lafayette, and Monroe County. In Senate Enrolled Act 181, lawmakers empowered Rokita's office to enforce a 13-year-old sanctuary city ban. So, do you think Tom Homan will be cracking down on those cities and, more importantly, those elected officials obstructing deportations like LA and Seattle say that they're going to do?
Well, I haven't heard of any. Well, I did hear this. South Bend, I think there was a lawsuit filed by the Attorney General's office against the city of South Bend or the county against the sheriff who's not participating or cooperating with ICE. So they're going to court over that. That's the only one that I've heard that might be resisting the call for deportations. But Todd Rokita won't put up with it. They're going to allow him to come in and do it anyway. So I think we're going to find out.
And former trans secretary and former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is unemployed now. What do you make of his tenure? Did he keep the roads free of potholes during his 4 years with Biden? And do you think he's going to come back to Indiana and seek a future role, maybe governor or senator?
He wouldn't stand a chance as governor. He might try to run for Senate, but I think he's damaged goods. He's very incompetent. I think people saw that firsthand, come out of nowhere. You go to South Bend, Indiana, and talk to people. You ask how he got elected, and they can't tell you. They said he was a horrible mayor when he was there. They called his nickname was Pothole Pete up there, and then he becomes transportation secretary for Biden, and we've seen what a disaster that was. The guy is just incompetent.
Yeah, he was the old-fashioned figurehead. He talked a lot of talk, never said a darn thing, and certainly didn't send the money the right direction when he was covering pay or filling potholes in Ukraine and not so much in South Bend, Indiana. I did a little walk and talk. I like to do on my channel when I've got something to say about folks. And so it was about Susan Collins from Maine, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, the only Democrat from Alaska, just so happens to be one of their 2 senators in DC, and former leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from China. And there are 3 votes against Hegseth for SecDef, or HegDef, as I like to call them now. Do you think Indiana voters would put up with rhinos like those states do for so long?
No, they'd be voted out.
How did Evan Bayh stay around so long?
Evan Bayh, there's a interesting story. When he ran for governor here, he campaigned and ran on a conservative, pro-life platform. He was young, attractive, good speaker, articulate. He was following several years of Republican governorships, and he was the son of Evan Bayh or Birch Bayh, very popular United States senator here, who lost to Dan Quayle in 1980 under the Reagan coattails. But the Bayh name carried a lot of weight. So he was a very good 2-term Democrat governor here. And I think, he had aspirations of becoming president. We ended up serving in the Senate for several years and then tried to run for president. And Todd Young beat him in 2016 when the Trump coattails had an effect. But Bayh became very liberal after he left Indiana and went to Washington, D.C. It was amazing, the transformation. He was so far left, it was not even recognizable to when he was a governor.
That is, what do they call that? Beltwayitis or the swamp fever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was a big problem, and it didn't serve him well. Indiana went, what was it here? 58.6 to 40, 18 points blowout for Trump over Kamala. What do they expect from Trump's 3rd term?
What everybody expects: secure the border, stop funding foreign wars. Indiana's a MAGA state. They think like we do. They want America first. They support Trump. They know the lawfare against him. They want all that addressed. The two big things I hear most is we got to investigate the 2020 election, and we got to find out the truth what happened January 6, 2021. Those two items are front and foremost on the front burners for everyone because, like I said, we can't move forward as a country until we resolve those two issues.
Yeah, now that the J6ers are out, that was my big one too. So now we can be a country again. We were not a republic or a democracy while those guys were in jail and gals. In 2016, he beat Hillary there 57-38. 2020 beat Biden 57-41, or so they tell us. So he picked up more votes both times, but Democrats gained 2 points from Hillary to Kamala and three for Joe, so they say. Is there a liberal trend in Indiana that we should be on the lookout for, or nah?
Uh, no, I don't believe so. Not yet.
Okay.
I believe if there was ever a time where you might see that would have been this last governor's election.
Do you remember what the vote was on that one or the percentages?
Stephanie McCormick ran as a Democrat, and she was a longtime Republican here. She didn't have much of a message in her campaign. I heard some of her radio ads. I want to say that margin was under 10 points. It might have been over, but early in the evening it was up 12-13, but I think she narrowed that margin. They called it early for Braun, I thought. He probably did not carry it as large as previous Republican governors did.
I wonder why she thought she could get away with leaving the Republican Party for the Democratic Party in a year like that. But okay, whatever. There's always a fool born every minute, right? So I've been saying there are really 85 Democrats in the Senate. Maybe you disagree with me. And JD Vance breaking the tie for Hegseth kind of proves there are at least 50 still in the Senate. Jim Banks and Todd Young are both Republicans and from Indiana. Are y'all happy with those two there? Or are they kind of more the Mitch McConnell establishment types?
I think Todd Young is more a Mitch McConnell type. I think Jim Banks is a patriot.
What makes him so?
Um, I've heard him speak a lot. He's MAGA. He's pro-Trump. He's going to support the Trump agenda. He was all about, he doesn't believe the 2020 election was legitimate either. And Mike Braun, to his credit, did not vote to certify the 2020 election. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but he didn't vote to certify it. He was one Republican senator that did not. Todd Young, on the other hand, I always felt like he was a never Trumper. He just didn't like Trump's style. He thinks you have to be a statesman. Sometimes you don't always have to be a statesman to fix things. Just get the job done. I've met Todd Young. I've talked to him several times. He's establishment, in my opinion. Yeah, he's a veteran. He likes to talk Constitution and all. Sometimes I wonder if these guys really understand what the Constitution says. But he did vote to confirm Hegseth. So,
Yeah,
and
both of them did. Yeah, that's
yes.
right.
But
And which one's the senior senator? Is Todd Young the senior senator?
yes,
Okay.
Todd Young is the senior senator now.
Okay, and either of them up for re-election next year?
Let's see. Todd Young got elected in 16, 22. Todd Young will be up in 28. Jim Banks just got elected.
Well, he better behave then.
Yes.
Richard Lugar was your longest serving senator, probably most famous for Nunn-Lugar Act that dismantled WMDs in the former Soviet Union. What do Hoosiers think of Lugar? And since we're at war with Russia again, what do you think he'd have thought of the Russia hoax and war in Ukraine, making fellow longtime Senator Biden rich?
Richard Lugar was well respected throughout the ranks of Indiana forever. He did lose, I believe, the last time he ran, which I don't remember when that was. I can't remember how that went down, but he started to lose popularity towards the end, and it was over the war issue, some of the war stuff, and he seemed to be disconnected from people. So maybe that was hurting him. Maybe there was some health issues going on. I don't know, but he was one of those that didn't want to let go of power. And you know how they are. They get in there, become career politicians, serving forever, and they don't want to relinquish power. It's just like, well, we see how these senators are. They get in and they want to die there. And that's basically what happens.
There were a lot of these Cold War sort of leftovers that maybe stayed a little too long, not just Teddy Kennedy, but maybe he was a victim of that, where there was like, okay, we're ready for some fresh blood. Let's bring him on in. And literally, a guy named Young came into the system. Um, how did you get wind of the John Rich party for inauguration, and why'd you make the long drive down to be there for that?
I'm
Don't get me
friends with
wrong, I'm glad you did. It was nice to meet you, but I just wanted a little backstory there.
I'm friends with Cat Turd. We followed each other for years, and we we communicate. And he put out an X on or put out a post on X right after the election. It was a teaser about getting people's opinions. What if they would come to Nashville for inauguration stock? So that's how it started. Because I went to Turd Stock in October, which is the second annual event, and that was at John Rich's bar as well. So I messaged him, and he said, "Yeah, we're going to do it. Give me all the details and the link for the tickets." So that's how we went. Um, I took my wife went with me and another couple, but we went to Turd Stock in October. It was just me and my friend John, but we took the wives down this time, and it was a great time. Hooked up with a lot of people that I had met in October through X, but had never talked to them or personally met them until that event. So you find out people that you follow and communicate on X with on social media, get to meet the real person. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's what I feel about you. And it's really cool because when you think back to like the founding of our country, the revolutionaries were all meeting in pubs in clandestine, efforts to circumvent the British Empire, and that's kind of like what we were doing on Broadway at John Rich's Redneck Riviera. So it's feels connected to our patriotic roots. Um, and poor Catcher, poor Philip. It was great to meet him as well, but it took him 9 hours to get here from Florida. He hit a deer, which I think maybe totaled his car. And then he ends up in the hospital for 3 days with a stomach issue. Uh, I don't know if he felt as jubilant as we all did about being inauguration, but did you get the sense, like I did, not until he actually was sworn in did we really believe he was going to make it into the end zone. I mean, it was unbelievable. Obviously, he had to get through an assassination attempt. He had to get through all the lawfare. He had to get through all the hell that they threw at him from the Democrats and the media for so long. But not until he literally swore on the Bible could we say, okay, we can breathe a sigh of relief. The country is back.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Everybody was concerned whether he was going to make it or they was going to try to do something else, but he did. He made it, and there was a sigh of relief. It was a huge sigh of relief. You could sense it, you could feel it.
Yeah, and regardless of the Jan 6 history, I went to the first Clinton inauguration, and it was about 10 degrees in DC, which is freezing. I'll never do it again. The rates were just outrageously costed, so it was much funner to watch it on his big screen TV with you guys and the live music that they gave us and stuff like that. So that is the patriotic way to do it. And I'm glad he moved indoors because there was some weird threats with all those
Yeah.
Christmas time drones and who knows what. And it never happened. It never got to be whatever it was going to be. So I'm glad. What are your goals for 2025 back at home? Going to run for governor or senate?
No, no, it's just local. I have no aspirations to move up the political ladder. Not at this stage of my life, and it's not something I ever wanted to do anyway. Actually, I never really wanted to run for local government, but got involved and was approached by several people and thought about it and thought about it. Got my wife to sign off on it. Decided if I was going to do this, I'd have to find other people to run to. One person can't make a change, but collectively, it was a group. If we get elected, we can. So that's what we did.
And you're not the mayor, are you an assemblyman of your town? What town is that, and what's the population?
City council president. We have 5 city council members and a mayor. I do. There's somebody else serving as mayor. We have a clerk treasurer, governing body of works. Town's about 3,000 people. City,
Okay.
small city in the southern part of the state, and small county, one of the smallest counties in the state, population wise. So, yeah, it's very remote. Everybody knows everybody.
Excellent. And are you having success making it MAGA, or are you coming into resistance where the developers want to turn it into a big Walmart parking lot?
No, we don't have that issue. We just focused on infrastructure, trying to make our city a little safer as far as the streets go, and trying to figure out ways to grow the city economically, get some more housing, different things of that nature. That's been our focus. And just trying to stay focused on that and making sure that we have all the opportunities that are really available to us that we can tap into and help grow our city. We're not talking about doubling the size of the city, but growing it enough where the schools can reap the benefit of it, grow our tax base a little bit, get some economy, local economy growth. It all works together. So it all starts with housing, and that's what's been part of our primary focus. And so after a year, I think we're on the right track.
We got some big agenda items coming up here in Tennessee, and I do like in Tennessee to Indiana, same with Wyoming and South Dakota, Texas, Florida, of course, MAGA states, red states. That if we were ever going to separate, I'd certainly want you involved, just like your neighbors in Idaho, not Washington, where I'm from. Does Indiana have some pretty big stuff like school choice vouchers or maybe some bodily autonomy type of constitutional things to keep mandates away from our skin and our children? Anything big on the agenda for Indiana that we should keep an eye on?
Those issues are pretty safe here. So yeah, there is school choice. We don't have burdening against our constitutional rights here at all. It is a constitutional carry state, open carry, concealed carry, whatever. So yeah, it's pretty much pro Second Amendment, pro First Amendment, and pro parents as far as the schools go.
Good, because MAGA really is the parent party, in my opinion. So Indiana's going to lead the way on that for sure. People love even what's his name, Mike Pence. I think a family of 6 kids, something like that. Big.
Mhm.
Trump was just in California visiting fire victims, and the same day he was in North Carolina visiting flood victims. I mean, the tireless man of the people. And thankfully, after all the neglect that North Carolina was getting, and even California under Newsom, President Reagan, during a visit to the Fort Wayne, Indiana flood victims, was same type of thing. Got out there, came down, saw everyone. March 16th, 1982. Do you remember that? Did you happen to catch that?
Do what again? I was distracted there a second.
Oh, sorry. Reagan visited Fort Wayne, Indiana flood
Yes.
victims. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise visit. It went over really well. Of course, this was a Reagan state at the time too, but that was well received. There was a lot of assistance given. He's conservatives are popular in the Fort Wayne area. That's a pretty solid red area. A lot of economic growth and development there because it is pro growth, pro MAGA, I guess you might say. It's a beautiful city. If you would see the development that's went up there the last several years, you'd be amazed. It's getting ranked very high marks nationally for some of the things they've done in Fort Wayne.
Great. Yeah, no wonder Trump likes it. All right, last question. You're wearing your university hat on. That's cool. Universities have been, along with sanctuary cities, sort of the bastion of problems for some of the conservative, constitutionalist, patriotic people we know. Um, how are the university systems and all the money they get from both the NIH and alumni that are sometimes super woke? Uh, how are they how are they treated in Indiana in terms of, let's say, compare and contrast to like a Washington State where I'm from, where they throw their money around quite a bit and they make it worse, not better, especially things like Title IX, letting men play in girls' sports or opening up locker rooms at the summer swim leagues for children, et cetera, et cetera. What's the university and the political culture like in Indiana?
Well, we don't allow any of that stuff. Excuse me. At the colleges and universities here, even though Bloomington, Indiana University has a very liberal culture. The city is liberal. Hasn't always been that way, but it has become that way over the years. So the culture in Indiana is, Indiana University is probably one of the worst of all the state universities as far as the woke culture, very left, but it doesn't seem to be encroaching on everything up there, which is good because there is pockets that just don't subscribe to it. So there's boundary lines they haven't tried to cross, if that makes sense.
It does because you get your senators that like Elizabeth Warren that come from Massachusetts and basically represent those mega MITs and Harvards and whatnots, and versus what you're saying is that maybe your two senators are like, nah, we don't really care about all that wokeness. We're
Yeah.
gonna keep Indiana, which is thumbs up from me. Well, Mike, thank you for following me on X, and my little account hopes to grow like yours one day. We're at the end here, so please tell our listeners where they can go to find out more about you and follow your social media and your political career.
I'm on X at Real Hickory, REAL Hickory, and that's where you'll find me. And anything that I share politically or anything is right there. I don't have any other social media sites. I'm primarily on X.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for coming on with us. It was nice to meet you. Hang on, everyone. I'll be right back after a quick break. Hey, thanks for coming back. It's that time to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. Now, the Heartland Journal news. Today, I decided to read from my own article that just came out on Friday so that you'll know if you don't already subscribe or go to the website, heartlandjournal.com. This is what we're doing over there. NATO Expansion Interruptus by me at theheartlandjournal.com. The decision to expand NATO to include former Eastern Bloc countries, particularly those bordering Russia, was influenced by a combination of geopolitical considerations and responses to historical events. In 1994, during Bill Clinton's presidency, NATO's Partnership for Peace program was launched, aiming to build cooperative security relationships with Eastern European countries. This was part of a broader strategy to stabilize Europe after the Cold War and to prevent the resurgence of Russia's influence in the region. The Korean War, which began in 1950, was the first major military test for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. The Korean War demonstrated the importance of NATO's integrated multinational force and centralized command for collective defense. It also highlighted the need for rapidly deployable forces capable of fighting a limited war. Henry Kissinger, who had been a prominent figure in U.S. foreign policy during the Cold War, initially supported NATO expansion as a way to promote stability and democratic governance in Eastern Europe. He believed that integrating these countries into NATO would help to solidify a post-Cold War order and diminish the chances of conflict in Europe. However, in the 2000s, Kissinger's perspective shifted. He became more critical of NATO's eastward expansion, arguing that it could provoke Russia and undermine stability. He warned that such actions could lead to a resurgence of Russian nationalism and antagonism toward the West. Kissinger started to advocate for a more nuanced approach that recognized Russia's legitimate interest and sought to engage with it directly rather than isolating it through military alliances. In 1999, NATO led an air campaign against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia to stop the violence and humanitarian crisis in Kosovo. The operation lasted from March 24 to June 10, 1999. The campaign led to the withdrawal of Yugoslav forces from Kosovo and the establishment of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo. Former U.S. Secretary of State Kissinger admitted that the U.S. promised the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev not to expand NATO to the east, but only verbally. According to the politician, there were no official commitments stipulated in the written agreements. It was a personal promise of the then head of the State Department, James Baker. Quote, I know it's true, but it's never been written down. So we are right in saying that there was no official commitment, Kissinger said. Earlier, the former U.S. Secretary of State stated that European countries are against Ukraine joining NATO. The politician added that the opponents of Ukraine's entry into the alliance explain that the issue requires careful study, Kissinger said. Today's war in Ukraine is the culmination of a 30-year project of the American neoconservative movement. The Biden administration is packed with the same neocons who championed the U.S. wars of choice in Serbia 1999, Afghanistan 2001, Iraq 2003, Syria 2011, Libya 2011, and who did so much to provoke Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The neocon track record is one of unmitigated disaster, yet Biden has staffed his team with neocons. As a result, Biden is steering Ukraine, the US, and the European Union toward yet another geopolitical debacle. If Europe has any insight, it will separate itself from these US foreign policy debacles. The Institute for the Study of War, a neocon think tank led by Kimberly Allen Kagan and backed by a who's who of defense contractors such as General Dynamics and Raytheon, continues to promise a Ukraine victory. Regarding Russia's advances, the ISW offered a typical comment. Regardless of which side holds the city of Severodonetsk, the Russian offensive at the operational and strategic level will probably have culminated, giving Ukraine the chance to restart its operational level counteroffensive to push Russian forces back. The facts on the ground, however, suggest otherwise. The West's economic sanctions have had little adverse impact on Russia, while their boomerang effect on the rest of the world has been large. Moreover, the U.S. capacity to resupply Ukraine with ammunition and weaponry is seriously hamstrung by America's limited production capacity and broken supply chains. Russia's industrial capacity, of course, dwarfs that of Ukraine's. Russia's GDP was roughly 10 times that of Ukraine before war, and Ukraine has now lost much of its industrial capacity in the war. President Joe Biden touted the expansion of NATO, his actions in the Middle East, and progress in lowering military sexual assaults in a commitment address to the West Point graduating class. He drew a sharp contrast with his Republican rivals by underscoring values Democrats have suggested are at risk, such as democracy and the NATO alliance. Quote, "Nothing is guaranteed about democracy in America," he said. "Every generation has an obligation to defend it, to protect it, to preserve it, to choose it. Now it's your turn." While the initial push for NATO expansion was driven by a desire to secure a stable Europe and reduce Russian influence, the evolving geopolitical landscape led Kissinger to reconsider the implications of that expansion, advocating for a more diplomatic approach in the later years. America and NATO should have heeded that change of mind. The shift Trump envisions would involve significantly and substantially downsizing America's security role, stepping back instead of being the primary provider of combat power in Europe, somebody who provides support only in times of crisis, said Dan Caldwell, who recently served as a senior advisor to Russell Vought, the former senior Trump administration official who in May was named policy director for the Republican National Convention and who is expected to play a senior role in a second Trump administration. Vought is also president of the CRA. Trump has consistently expressed pique that NATO allies rip us off by not meeting the 2% spending target. Most recently, Trump actually appeared to invite a Russian attack against NATO deadbeats, saying he'd encourage the Russians to do whatever the hell they want with members of countries that have not yet met the defense spending target, a decade after the NATO allies pledged to do so at their 2014 summit in Wales. On June 14th last year, Putin said Russia would be ready to negotiate an end to the war if Ukraine renounced any ambition to join NATO and withdrew troops from the 4 regions that Moscow has claimed as its own. Asked in his June 24 debate with Biden if such terms were acceptable, Trump replied, "No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started." Editorial opinions expressed in this column are the sole opinion of the writer. That's me, folks. I just wanted to share that with you. I don't think I've ever done that before on this show, but I do write every Friday, just like Gigi every Monday, and Vincent as often as he can, and Scott as often as he can, so that you can have content like that. And I really hope you like it. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Mike at Old Hickory on X, for reminding us a state can keep their residents happy and their voters and not have to rely on folks in DC for their daily bread. Keep Indiana great. That is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. See ya all next week. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God. Steve, take us out with the great Ronald Reagan visiting flood victims in Indiana.
All right. I think you should know, you of the Capitol Press Corps who are here. This is Mayor Moses of Fort Wayne, and here is Governor Orr of Indiana, and my good friend Governor Jim Rhodes of Ohio. Ohio and Wisconsin are all, or Michigan I should say, are all involved in this flood. But we were, as you know, in Oklahoma, and I wanted to make this stop. Congressman Coates of this district has been in communication with our people about this, and I'm looking forward to talking with him, but I wanted to see for myself, and certainly let the people know here that their neighbors in the rest of the country are interested. This is quite a story that's been going on here. I can't say that all of the emergency's been stopped. We know it hasn't. Been great distress for the people, but it could have been far worse had it not been for thousands of volunteers, including young people who have been working literally around the clock in sandbagging the dikes and helping to prevent this from being worse.
Mr. President, what was your impression, sir?
See from the air, I saw too many houses with water all around them.
And in Oklahoma, sir, what did you see there?
Well, in Oklahoma, we went over Bartlesville and saw that swath of destruction there that had been caused by the tornadoes yesterday.
President, we're really going to have to move.
Well, they tell me we have to move.
Declare this a disaster area?
Well, that's what is going to be. Our people are in communication on this, and we'll be talking about that.
So mainly now you're going to see the evacuees and the victims?
Yes.
What will you tell the victims and the families of those who are homeless now?
Well, I think first of all, try to tell them that how much all their neighbors in this country feel for them, how concerned we are. And maybe this would be a good time from coast to coast and border to border for our people to remember their neighborliness and offer a hand here and help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So, here's the car.
What you know about softball all night? What you know about a rooftop plunge? You might have had a cold beer in a cornfield, didn't go down like where I'm from. What you know about an "oh, I'm sorry" with a little bit of Hoosier charm? What you know about a little pink houses and every jukebox and every dive bar? Turned out, laid back, just enough crazy. Learn from way back, growing up made me Indiana. What you know about a pontoon party? What you know about Allen's Creek? What you know about a drive-in, fog it up, then don't care what we see. What you know about high school sweethearts, working hard on a heartland dream? Oh, what you know about a guy like me? Turned out, laid back, just enough crazy. Learn from way back, growing up made me. Hey, Indiana, Indiana, Indiana. Yeah, I've been dreaming of the wild, wild plains, walking where the pine trees dance.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.